The Temple of Horyuji in Nara, the ancient capital of Japan, is home to the Shaka Triad, a fine example of a gilt bronze Buddha crafted in the 7th century by artisans from the Chinese continent. A group of present-day craftsmen have taken on the challenge of recreating this treasure. The city of Takaoka, near the Japan Sea coast, has a 400-year history of bronze work. A little over 20 kilometers south of Takaoka is the town of Inami, which is famous for its wood carvers. These highly skilled traditional craftsmen are now collaborating with a high-tech research team from the Tokyo University of the Arts to recreate the artistry of Buddhist craftsmen that flourished 1400 years ago. This is Horyuji Temple in Nara Prefecture. In January 2016, Takaoka and its neighbor city Nanto arranged for the craftsmen of Takaoka and Inami to take a look at the Shaka Triad at Horyuji. They arrive at the main hall of the temple's western precinct. The Shaka Triad is enshrined here. The triad consists of the Buddha Sakyamuni in the center, flanked by bodhisattva attendants. Behind them is a huge halo in the shape of a lotus petal. Many of the craftsmen are seeing the Shaka Triad for the first time.
Like 影を表現してあるなっていうか。
なんていうか例えば金属っていう感じがしない。
本当にね。
The craftsmen are wondering if they can recreate the drape of the garments and the intricate patterns.
大変は大変だよね。ただこれにもう徹底して似せるってことになるとね。
The coordinator of this project is Professor Junji Ito, an art producer who specializes in organizing modern reproductions of ancient art.
高岡にはその高度な技術を持つ職人さんたちが連携し合って一つのものを作ろうという意識が強く残っているところだと思うんですね。今回その高岡の職人さんたちが仏の心を刻む、そのためにものを確保していく、これほど具体的なものはなかったと思いますんで、そういう意味で非常にはっきりした目的を持った時によみがえる感動というものをもう見るのが楽しみですよね。
Making a copy of the Shaka Triad begins at the Tokyo University of the Arts. Here they create a three-dimensional image using the latest digital technology. A high-definition scanner calculates the necessary data. Professor Masaaki Miyasako specializes in preserving and restoring cultural treasures.
あの意味ではこういうふうにこういうとこ埋めなきゃいけないんですよね。こういうふうに穴が開いてるところを全部データ上で埋めていくって作業ができるっていう。これでもまだここの質感とこの質感が違いますんで、今度はこれを鋳物屋さんがこの質感を合わせてもらうっていうところになるわけですよね。
With the data produced by the university research team, it will be the turn of the bronze workers to cast the triad.
職人参加の目から見て、ここはこうだろう、ああだろうっていうアドバイスいただく。だからやっぱりそういうのの皆さんで作り上げていく、両方の現場の人とそれからそういうデータの世界とが融合していくということによって、新しい次の世代のこういう造形っていうことに対する一つの大きなきっかけになるんじゃないかなという気がいたします。
Based on accurate three-dimensional data, a 3D printer sets to work on making a life-size copy of the Shaka Triad. This model is delivered to the bronze casters in Takaoka. The two cities, Takaoka and Nanto, invited craftsmen to view the model. This is their first encounter with a 3D model. After scrutinizing it carefully, they have a number of questions.
問題はこれ、そうゴム取りした時に筋が出る。
多分分かる。わしも触ったところ何かとかは分かる。
波目みたいな模様ついてるでしょこれ。この現物の法隆寺のこの像にはないものやね。
そうですね。このまま撮ったら多分えらいことになります。
A 3D model is made by building up layer upon layer, based on detailed cross-sectional measurements. That's why lines that look like gradations or wood grain appear at the joints. Professor Miyasako and his team have also arrived. Very soon, questions are flying.
低いところが底がないところが一番出ちゃう。
肌おそらくどういう最終的に芸大の方で最終仕上げを表面処理されるのかなということが、おそらくこれ鋳物ではね全部出ます。こういう
この
目は残すということですか。
残すというかその
箔を置くという。
仕上げのところでどれだけ表面をいけるかっていうところで仕上げていけば私はこれで十分。
A number of problems crop up. The question is, how close to the original Shaka Triad will their copy be? Their challenge has begun. The history of Takaoka metal casting goes back 400 years. The person responsible for initiating the craft is enshrined at Zuryuji Temple. He was Maeda Toshinaga, the second lord of the wealthy Kaga domain. His memorial tablet can be found in the temple's lecture hall. Toshinaga gathered skilled craftsmen from various parts of the country to his domain. They were given land, and in return for vitalizing the local industries, they were exempted from taxes and menial work. Takaoka bronze casting began in Kanayamachi. The town still preserves the beautiful old-style housing. Toshinaga invited 7 foundry workers from the Kawachi area of Osaka and had them settle here. In June every year, the townspeople celebrate the Goin Festival and fill the streets with dance and song. It's their way of expressing their gratitude to Toshinaga for having given them a livelihood. They used to sing this song in the old days to take their minds off the hard work in the foundries. Another popular event in Takaoka is the Mikurumayama Festival, which also had its origins in the metal casting traditions. Colorful floats from 7 different districts make their way through the town, competing with each other for the best float. Each float displays gorgeous fittings made of copperware and other examples of the fine metal work produced here. The ornaments attached to the wheels are made by chiseling patterns on the metal. The skills required to produce such brilliant objects have been passed down to this age by the craftsmen of Takaoka. Copper is heated to make it malleable so that the design can be hammered on the reverse side to make it stand out, using chisels of various sizes. This decoration is made by inlay work, where different metals are embedded into the background metal. By using alloys of different colors, the result is like a painting. This picture depicts a pomegranate and sparrow. The red, brown, and yellow alloys are used in a colorful way to achieve this intricate effect. There is another kind of craftsman responsible for making singing bowls used in Buddhist meditation. The bowl is made by repeatedly hammering the brass until it produces a truly solemn, clear sound. After heating the brass to make it pliable, the craftsman beats it with hammers of varying sizes and angles so as to heighten the intensity of the metal and achieve a tone of the desired wavelength. The sound of a bowl that has completed its tuning is totally different from a bowl that hasn't been tuned.
これが調律前のリズムです。調律後のリズムはこちらのリズムになります。
It takes 10 years to acquire this skill. As they move into February, work begins on casting the Shaka Triad. The work will be divided among 5 foundries. This foundry will be responsible for casting the central Buddha based on the 3D model. The method used here is to apply a thin coating of melted wax to the silicone rubber mold. A thin coating of melted wax is applied and allowed to dry before applying the next layer. This way, they can build up the wax millimeter by millimeter. The wax solidifies instantly, so they must use the brush speedily. Only a truly experienced craftsman can achieve this smooth finish.
僕も長いことやってますけども、必ずしも綺麗になるとは限らないんですけど、我々やっててもこれだけ大変なことを昔の人はよくやられたなと思って本当に感心しますね。まあこういう国宝のようなものをやるのは初めてなのでかなり緊張はしますね。
Finally, they have applied 6 millimeters of wax. This will be the thickness of the finished bronze statue. Here they are working on making the mold for the Amitabha, standing to the left of Sakyamuni. As they begin, a problem arises with the thickness of the wax. Since they have no way of knowing the exact thickness of the real statue, they have to rely on trial and error.
私らは 3D でやったデータで打ち込んだものだからこれでやると非常に鋳造は難しいです。薄すぎます。
Depending on the outside temperature, the wax mold may shrink or expand by as much as 1.4%. During the cold winter, a thin mold can crack very easily. That's why the mold made to the exact measurements of the 3D model cracked.
まあいかな 3D のいいものを使ってもやはり欠陥はありますから、ただそれをどううまく解釈してものにするかということが私らの仕事かもしれませんね。
The wax mold of Sakyamuni is completed. Professor Takashi Fukai from the sculpture department of Tokyo University of the Arts has come along to inspect the result. He compares it carefully with the 3D model.
鋳物になった時に仕上げる時にここの辺がですね、
気になる。出てくる可能性が。
我々はこういうところなくしたいんだよ。
でもね、これなくすと
大変な話だ。
The digital flaw that appeared in the 3D model has been transferred to the wax model. The question is, how far will they be able to disguise it in the finished statue? As for the Amitabha, they show Professor Fukai the cracked wax mold. They discuss whether they can make changes to the thickness.
これが薄いから3ミリとか4ミリですよね。これですね。いや別に薄くしろっていうことはないんで、
わかりました。じゃあ少し
もうちょっと厚くして方がそちらとしてやりやすいんならいいと思いますよ。
ずいぶん楽になりました。
あ、そうですか。
やっぱり緊張するんですよ。
国宝ですからね。
そうですね。
In the end, they decide to increase the thickness of the wax mold by a millimeter or two. Making a mold of the Great Halo requires a different method from the statues. This method uses gas. The complex patterns of the 3D model are covered with sand so as to get an imprint of the shapes and fine lines. Nearly 100 imprints are required for the entire halo.
先般法隆寺さんの現物も見させていただきましたけれど、ものすごく威圧感というか、もう迫力がある品物なんで、やっぱ忠実な作業をしたいですから、繊細な仕事をしなきゃいかんなというふうに思ってますんで、はい。
When they have finished making imprints of the entire halo, it is left to dry. Then each piece is removed. In charge of this process is Alon Fink, a craftsman from Israel. The next step is to fix each part to what will become the frame of the Great Halo.
Fukai ところと狭いところは抜きにくいから抜こうとしたらかけて壊れる。
神経使いますね。
はい。できたら満足ですね。難しいから。
With all the pieces in place, they can proceed to cast the Great Halo. They succeed in capturing the fine details of the Buddha. But again, the layers that appeared in the 3D model are repeated here too. As a craftsman, he does his best to remove the flaws and smooth out the joints as best he can. Whenever the need arises, they discuss the problem with the research team. The next step is to pour molten metal into the mold. A bronze statue of the Buddha stands 16 meters high as a symbol of Takaoka's success as a center of the metal casting industry. It was made some 80 years ago by the foundry workers to replace the wooden statues of the Buddha that were destroyed in one fire after another. It is one of the largest statues of the Buddha in Japan. Following a long history of efforts to perfect the skills of metal casting, the industry enjoyed a golden age during the late 19th century into the early part of the 20th century. This intricately decorated incense burner was the work of Yazaemon Yokoyama, a Meiji-era metal caster hailing from Takaoka. It was exhibited at a world fair in the late 19th century. It is a brilliant representation of Yamata no Orochi, a mythical snake-like monster with 8 heads and 8 tails. Works like this illustrate the high skills of the bronze casters of Takaoka, and the tradition has been handed down to this day. This is the Inami district of Nanto City, just south of Takaoka. The wooden pedestal for the triad is being carved here. In charge of making the frame for the pedestal is Hidekazu Fuji, whose career as a wood carver and carpenter spans 50 years. He is putting together a frame base made of Japanese cypress to the exact measurements of the original triad. These photos and a flat plan are all he has to go on. It's up to him to fill in the unknown details.
通常よりは難しい。
普通ならまっすぐに立てたいんやけど、上と下と5ミリしか違わんだりとか。
5ミリずれてる。
5ミリこう上が狭まったんです。下よりも。
Since the top is smaller by 5 millimeters, he has to make up the difference by adjusting the pitch slightly. The stand must be sturdy enough to withstand the weight of the Shaka Triad and the Great Halo, a total of more than 500 kilograms. Fuji must make delicate adjustments, millimeter by millimeter, with his plane.
ミリ単位の調整をしていかなきゃいけないっていうのは結構大変だと思うんですけど。
そこだけさえ気をつけとれば、はい、それだけですよ。やった以上はやっぱ頑張ってね、やっぱ完成はさせる。
The history of Inami as a town of skilled carpenters goes back 600 years. Carpenters who had been given free land by the Kago domain joined together to build what became their local temple, Zui-senji. Soon they were adding decorative features to their work, nurturing many highly skilled woodcarvers and carpenters. Zui-senji is a masterpiece of temple architecture in central Japan. Decorative carvings can be seen all over the temple gate and main hall. For 400 years or so, until the early 20th century, the woodcarvers of Inami were enthusiastic about displaying their skills, which are still evident to this day. As many as 180 woodcarvers carry on the tradition of carving ranma. these highly decorative transoms above doorways. Each carver displays his expertise by using a variety of chisels to progress from a rough outline to the complex patterns of the finished transom. From the early 20th century, Inami wood carving became widely known and was chosen for transoms in ordinary houses and home Buddhist altars, and used as decorative features for festival stalls. With the frame for the pedestal finished, the next stage is to add the decorative carving. The work is being undertaken by master carver Saburo Aoyama. He is also one of the judges at the annual Japan Fine Arts Exhibition. The pedestal is surrounded by carvings of lotus petals. The wood is camphor, the same as was used in the original 7th century pedestal. The wood is very sensitive to changes in humidity, so this factor has to be taken into account in carving each petal. Aoyama checks the plan and photos as he gives substance to the image.
立体的になってくると実際の平面図とはまた違ってくるわけです。まあ僕らはこう何十年もやってるからね、割とそういうところは仕上がった部分を想定しながらやっています。現物のものを見てるとなんとなくそのボリューム感が伝わってくるみたいな。
He makes fine adjustments to the petals so that the beauty of the curves is emphasized.
一番今回は気をつけてるのはこのカーブの部分ですかね。こういうだらーっといってキュッと上がってるみたいな。今回のこの返り花というのが一番大事なところじゃないでしょうかね。はい。なんか当時携わっていた作家というか職人というかどういった気持ちでやってるんだろうなというのはなんか共通するものがあるんでそういう思いを馳せてやってますけどね。はい。
And now for the final casting of the Shaka Triad. The top and bottom sections are joined together.
せーの。
The cauldron contains melted copper alloy. Its temperature, 1,250 degrees Celsius. The casting begins. Kajihara and his colleagues look on anxiously. You can feel the tension. The hot copper alloy is poured into the 4 holes. These holes allow the hot air to escape and prevent the metal from expanding with the sudden change in temperature. The casting takes place very quickly, but they won't know the result until it has cooled down completely. They crack the cooled mold and take out the halo. Small images of the Buddha and the lotus medallion in the center become visible.
全く問題ないいいものの肌、写りも綺麗ですし、この時期我々冬の富山寒いですから、温度が下がると鋳型の砂の強度、そういうことも心配の一つでもあったんですけれども、全然鋳肌、いわゆる砂の肌が想像以上に綺麗に上がってるんで一安心しました。
The next casting is the Amitabha, the attendant on the left side. After heating the wax mold to 760 degrees Celsius in a furnace, liquid copper alloy is poured into the cast. The alloy must be poured in instantaneously in seconds. The molding process took a lot of trial and error, but now all they can do is pray. It's cooled down now, so they can crack it open.
やはり煮込むまでね、かなり心配ですよ。今のところは 100% の出来上がりだと思います。
Nakamura is relieved to see that the finish is so good. The casting of the Shaka Triad is perfect.
原芸からの写しということで、原芸では若干の我々の思いと違う部分はありましたが、その辺も、現場の方と大学の方と少し打ち合わせをしてより忠実なものができたというふうに思っています。今回これを機会に大学の先生なしとかでそういうもののノウハウとかですね、今後の業界としての方向性も一緒に、そういうものの中で成し得たいというふうに考えています。
The team from the Tokyo University of the Arts and the staff of Takaoka City Hall get together at the foundry to look at the great halo. They inspect the beautiful halo and check the fine details.
ここだ。ここだ。ここのライン。これ入れてみたの。
The gradations and digital flaws are hardly visible now.
ここまでできるところがもう素晴らしいですから、それをもう我々はどういうふうに補足していくかっていうところが、今度ポイントになってくるんじゃないのかな。こうやって持ち上げる方法で。
穴に音が出て間違いない。
いやなんかまた全然違うものを見てる感じですね。僕たちも全く初めてのことなんで知恵を出し合って作っていく中でお互いの信頼関係も生まれて気持ちが入ってきたっていうか、やっぱり今実際言えるのは 3D っていうのを過度に信頼しちゃいけないってことですよね。やっぱその 3D を補正できる人間の技術が残ってるうちにデジタル技術に対しての要求を厳しくしていかないと、職人の手によるこの鋳物に変わることによって本当生命を含まれたような感じがして。
Professor Miyasako sees the halo for the Amitabha statue for the first time.
いやー、綺麗にできてますね。本当に高岡市に型がずれているところとかそういうのをカバーしてもらいましたので、非常にいい仕上がりだと思います。こういう現代とその昔のものそういったこの技術っていうのが引き継がれてきたっていうのはもう日本ならではじゃないかと思います。文化財の同じものがもう一体できるっていう、それだけのやっぱり技術が練習されてるからこういうものができる。でやっぱりこの高岡の技術っていうものを見ていただくっていうことでは、日本のこの芸術のまた技術の力が世界にこれから発信していく一つの大きな力になるんじゃないかと考えております。
The Shaka Triad at Horyuji Temple. Tokyo University of the Arts succeeded in rendering an artwork of the 7th century in digital form. a collaboration of advanced technology and centuries-old skills practiced today by bronze casters in Takaoka and wood carvers in Inami have recreated this wonder. This craftsmanship, with its painstaking attention to detail, has survived for over 1,400 years to reenact the spirit of Buddhist artistry and take it into the future.